which always takes an extra step for some strange reason. Hello, and I'm going to start sharing my screen with you all just so that we can begin. And as people come in, I'm pretty sure the first parts, if they've been here before, are pretty clear. Okay, and let's do this. 1 second while I'll share my screen because it never goes quite the way I want it to. Okay, is everybody seeing the screen?
Yes.
All right. And let me do this. Okay, and welcome. I'm glad you all could attend today. There will be another session on Thursday at 10 a.m. this week. And hello. Hope you guys can find your favorite way of saying hello. I like oi the best. It's the shortest. And this is a facilitated learning circle zone. And what that means is that we will be discussing various approaches from our own experiences. We'll be teaching one another. And the only thing I will be doing is guiding the discussion. This is not a constructed learning webinar. This is a learning circle. And it's a collaboration of your experiences. Okay, rules for participating. Please be respectful. Don't speak over one another. Switch off all distractions, dogs and cats and little children excluded. And please don't multitask during the learning circle. I know that's hard to do sometimes, but do your best. Okay, and our objective today is understanding print awareness and print motivation, the executive functions of communicating and making connections, the best practices for virtual story times, the sharing of early literacy and mind in the making skills in virtual story times, and a discussion time. This will go for around 45 minutes so you guys can get back to your working shifts and not have your coworkers shoot you the evil eye if you're late. Okay. And we are now in our third session, and that's the next one will be on Thursday, as I said, at November 19th at 10 a.m. And the following week, of course, we're not having this, but on November 30th, we'll pick it up again with some new subjects. And let's talk about print awareness. I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with print awareness. As librarians, we always try to make people aware of books. And let's just get a real quick definition on this. Print awareness refers to a child's understanding of the nature and uses of print. A child print awareness is closely associated with his or her word awareness, or the ability to recognize words as distinct elements of oral and written communication. Both skills are acquired in the child's natural environment. Yay. Okay, let's skip ahead a little bit, sorry. All right, so print awareness, it should be what we all do, like I've mentioned before in all of our story times. We want kids to be aware of what books are and how they work, how they operate it. And as in the video that I put up on YouTube, the guys, yes, there's a print awareness book. she is making it, but we are challenged in these days because most of us are doing programs virtually. And since we've all started our virtual programming pretty much around the same time, most of us are used to in-person story times. But now we're having to do it virtually, and that's presented new problems in how to show kids the books and things like that. I combine print awareness and print motivation because they're kind of similar to me, but they are both dealing with the same subject, so we can lump these all together. Now, as pointed out by the lovely Terry Van Hooser, we had a nice little book up there. And teaching a book virtually, we've discussed some of those issues in the last session. But what have you, I'm going to open this question up to you guys. What have you done to raise print awareness among parents, families, and caregivers And what have you done for the kids to help them understand how books work, what they do, how to use a book? Because even parents sometimes forget that they sometimes have to slow down to explain things. And when I was teaching print awareness in the Miami-Dade Public Library, the one thing that I was aware of was that people assumed children knew how books work. And I had to explain to them, like in the video that we put up on YouTube, like, this is a book. How does a book work? How do you open the book? And oftentimes I would make mistakes so that the children who could articulate would often say, no, you mean if I hold a book upside down? And I'm sorry, I don't have one of my wife's books with me, but I like to do stuff like this. Does a book open like this? I'm sorry, I'm being washed out by my background, et cetera, et cetera. So let's open this up and let's talk to some of the people out there about what they do. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a moment so we can all see each other and I can see you. Okay, so let's start with Terry, since she had some books. Terry, do you have any techniques you use to raise print awareness?
Hi, Bruce, can you just refresh my memory on what I said before, because I'm not remembering about something about old books? Is that what you said?
Books. Okay. Print awareness is the love of books and showing kids how they work, little toddlers. And what we're trying to do is like come up with the best techniques to do this virtually,
right,
in story times. And one of the things we have to do is teach these skills to parents, right, and caregivers. And like, have you come up, it's okay if you haven't, but do you have a technique that you've used in your story times to help kids and parents learn how to promote print awareness?
Yeah, I guess I thought you said something about like referring back to the last meeting, something I had
right,
said.
That was my bad. Well, we were talking about the obstacles of virtual programming, yeah, and how it's changed. And everyone here is probably more comfortable with in-person. Yeah. And to go back, just a quick little brief of some of the points that we made in the last one was, in virtual, you don't always get an instant feedback from the audience. You don't see the audience sometimes. You put up a recording and you're not exactly sure of how well something is going as if you were in person. Right. And if you're losing people or not, like right now.
So I'm actually an exception to that, because I didn't do in-person story time. I helped out on special occasions, like when we'd have an all-day story time, I would do one, but I wasn't a regular presenter. And I've done a couple virtual ones since COVID and the shutdown, and I'm planning to do a few more. So I'm watching this, to help get up to speed on a lot of ways people do these things. But one thing I've noticed in just doing the virtual story times and watching some of my colleagues do them on our Facebook page is just making sure you just get the book up close enough to the camera so the kids can see the words.
Right.
I mean, that might sound obvious, but some people do it better than others, and they just aren't, really thinking about it. I don't think they're probably still going under the old, the kids couldn't see that well when they were 20 feet away from you, but now that they're really relying on that as their visual stimulation, it's very important to hold it up each time you turn a page, I think, closer to the camera.
Right, and this isn't, this is also to discuss the obstacles you're facing so that maybe somebody can pipe in to help. Mandy, do you have any ideas for promoting print awareness, or do you have any obstacles facing you? I think Mandy has to type. Okay, we'll give it a couple more seconds for Mandy. Anybody else? Oh, here we go. Mandy, not really. I'm learning more about what not to do and when I start. Yes, and what not to do is always an important part of it. what not to do have you learned? Just one. You don't have to go through the whole list if there's a ton of them.
Hi, Bruce. This is Judy. I'm sorry, am I interrupting anyone?
Nope, not really.
Okay. And I'm sorry I don't have my camera on. I have apparently this new bandwidth problem, and if I have it on, I can't connect, and that's why I was late this morning, so I'm going to leave it off if that's okay.
Okay.
But I totally agree with what Terry said and how some people do it better than others, because I personally had a really hard time just getting the book aligned properly, and then you know, getting it, like she said, close enough to the camera where they can actually see the words that you're speaking. And you know, normally in story time, I like to focus and point at the words, and then maybe even have a letter that you're featuring for that story time, say like P, and every time it kind of interrupts the story a little bit, but sometimes the kids like it. And every time you come to that word like puppet, you say puppet. Oh, that's a P sound. So maybe there's a way for virtual story time that we could incorporate that. I don't know if the flow would be interrupted too much. I guess I would need everyone's opinion on that. But I like pointing to the words, and so they know that that's, you know, what you're doing. You're reading from the book, and those letters form words, and the words form sentences. So,
well, Mandy just included in the conversation that seeing the book in enunciation, or probably I think we all get tongue-tied when we're doing story times and virtually. And it's going to be there in some cases for a very long time for everybody to see. And that might raise the anxiety level. My thing is always good. My only suggestion on that is always do a brief rehearsal so that you make sure you're comfortable with it, but that's no guarantee of success. The other thing that I would like to point out is that print awareness is that we have to teach parents how to teach their children how to use a book. And sometimes I think that can be easier virtually, because I don't think you need too much feedback on that. What you can do is, if you have a colleague or a puppet, you can even answer your own questions, like, how does a book work? Does it work like this? And you have the puppet go, no, it doesn't work like that. Or if you have a colleague screaming in the background, no, or something like that. But teaching, you know, the point of it is to make parents aware that they have to show their children how books work, because not every children are not born with this knowledge, and not to freak out when they start eating the book, which is a thing a lot of toddlers will do. It's the first thing they want to do to a book is taste it. You know, it's just something they like to do. But to me, it's important that, you know, you guys talk about your obstacles as well as your successes. Like when you don't feel comfortable doing this, or when you have a problem, you know, so we can discuss it a little bit, and maybe somebody in here. Samantha, do you have anything to add about print awareness? Any obstacles or any successes you've had with it? Are you including it in your story times? Okay. And same question to Jennifer.
I haven't really done anything. I haven't read anything or done anything, so I'm still learning.
Okay.
But one thing that I would be concerned about is, like, kids can't really get closer to the screen to see the words. And so I'm wondering, you know, is there anything we could do, like a visual aid, like I don't know, like something with bigger words on it? You know what I'm saying? Like they can't see the print necessarily on the screen as you're reading it.
Well, there is one thing that I heard about somebody doing that maybe will help, is if you put in captions on your YouTube video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can do
All right.
that. I'm not sure how successful it is in translating
Yeah.
because I haven't
Kids,
done
yeah.
this either, but that's one way. Like tell the parents to turn on the captions on the story time if they're viewing it from a YouTube. The other thing is
Okay.
in Miami, we had these huge books with large words. I don't know if your libraries have those, but it might be something you want to consider purchasing for this. And, you know, take a look around and see what you can grab. Okay, I'm going to share the screen again. We can move on to the next. Okay, and we're going to talk about print motivation. And real quickly, print motivation is a child interest and enjoyment of books. A child with print motivation enjoys being able to read to, plays with books, pretends to write, asks to be read to, and likes trips to the library. Okay. Now, as you know, in the last one, you're not going, most libraries are still closed due to the pandemic. So trips to the library might be a problem. And that is, to me, that was always the best print motivation you could have, is visiting a library, because then kids will start looking around at books, pulling them out of the shelves. And when you're a children's librarian, you love that and hate that, because you're the one who has to put it all back in order if you don't have pages. But other than that, it's always a joyful thing to see them pick what they pick, what they like. And there's my interruption for the day, and such things. And one of the things that it's going to be a challenge and an obstacle. Hold on 1 second. Hope that works. One of the obstacles that's going to be happening, that you're going to be encountering, is how to get this motivation for the joy of books and things like that when they don't have books, or and you have to rely on your parents to help the kids with their print motivation. One of the things that we were looking to do in the family reading program is supply books for distribution. And I think that's probably the best thing. If you have any books that you can distribute for free for them to build their own libraries, I really would recommend that. But this is one where I think all of you guys can help me out with this, is like, have you had any success with print motivation? And the other part of it is how do you get the parents to give you feedback on how their children are using books, or if they're using books like the way we mentioned, pretending to read and write and things like that. I mean, that feedback will be hard to obtain, and I'd like to hear from you guys if you've been able to do that. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute so we can talk about this. Oh, and I forgot to add that Samantha added to everyone. I agree with Judy and Terry about bringing the books close to and pointing out the text. I struggle with the camera anxiety, and that is one of my challenges. Okay, here's a big challenge, is like, if you go to our YouTube page, which I will get you the link for, there's a guy on there who does infomercial spots for print awareness and print motivation. And it's about 1 minute long, and he does a very good job. I would share it, but I've had so many bad times trying to share a video on this format that I'm not going to waste the time we do have, because I want to get Sarah up and running with her mind in the making. But be aware, a lot of what we're trying to discuss in this learning circle is how do we get the parents to do print awareness and print motivation. Do you guys, I want to ask this question to everybody. You can answer. I'm not going to call anybody out, but has anybody had any success in communicating with parents about literacy skills to begin with?
Bruce, Judy, Washoe, currently for our virtual story times, we do include with all of our story times a learning activity that goes along with the book. And you know, the intention is that parents continue the learning at home. So that's a really good opportunity that we have to share an additional resource for parents to interact with their child. And then one more thing on the print motivation. One thing that I always do for story time, haven't tried it too much in virtual, but you know, maybe like I said, when you're focusing on that one sound or that one word, I would put either a picture or the word on a paint stick and print it out and just on a piece of paper. And then I would hold it up and then everyone would have to say that sound or that word during the story time. And that might be for the virtual world, an easy way to incorporate that print awareness without disrupting the flow too much. I just thought of that.
Yeah, that's good. In one of the videos we have, one of the crafts that they developed to help with print motivation or print awareness, excuse me, is they had kids make their own menus. And it's a nice little 6-minute video on our website, but I thought it was really cool. They cut out pictures of the food. They'd have the child write, even if it wasn't correct, how they're written, and they'd make their own book. And sometimes making a book will be important to them understanding how a book works. And, you know, and understand that you read left to right, you open the book left to, you open the book. And one of the things that they did on the video previous for this is like explain that a book has a spine. And like when they said, take for instance, now I'm blanking on a good title to thing, but let's say Where the Wild Things Are. They say the title of the book is Where the Wild Thing Are. And that's the name of the book we're going to be reading. And then it's like author, you know, say the author's name, who I'm totally blanking on because my crossword puzzle skills have gone to pieces. And he's the one who wrote it. Illustrated. What do you think illustrated means? It means drawn. And there are pictures in there, you know, and you break it down for them in your thing. And you reiterate to the parents, say, hey, parents, before you start your book, tell them what the title is, tell them who wrote it, and tell them who drew it. Show them the spine of the book, show them the back of the book, show them the front of the book, and help them open up the book. That's a way to help do this. And I love the popsicle idea too, popsicle stick idea too. And I think this is a good portion for you all to think about, because we are trying to teach the parents and families these skills, and the obstacles are obvious. We don't get interaction or feedback. I hope you guys can think of some ways of getting feedback that's unique for all of these skills, and maybe bring it up at the next meeting you attend and saying, oh, we tried this, and experiment. We need to experiment with these things. There is no written rules on how to do a virtual story time. It's not like in-person story times where we got instant feedback from our colleagues, we got instant feedback from the public, and we learn from that. And, you know, feel free to go around the internet and check out other places' story times and things like that for ideas about what they do successfully and what they didn't do successfully. And hopefully, you know, that will help you with your colleagues and with other librarians. It's always a good thing to look around the state and see what people are doing, like Judy Hanson's doing in Washoe. I mean, that's amazing stuff. Okay, we are going to share the screen again. Yay. And we're going to get off the topic of print motivation and just ask yourself this: why is print awareness and print motivation important? You know, you don't have to answer this today, but keep it in mind and think about it. You know, because I'm not going to ask you for why do you think this is right now, but I want you to keep it in the back of your head when you're working this week, and maybe jot down a few observations so that you can discuss it in our next learning circle on Thursday, even if you guys want to hit us up again, you know, and see what you come up with. And, you know, sometimes thinking and reflecting on something is a good way to get this stuff developed. And now we're going to go to Mind in the Making, and I'm going to let Sarah talk to you for a little bit. And this week's Mind in the Making is communicating and making connections. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right.
Bruce, if you can let me share my screen too.
You're co-hosting. You can. You got it?
Not giving me the option.
Really? You're co-host. You should be. Down at the bottom with the green says share
Yeah,
screen.
the drop-down menu just doesn't have the option. It says one participant can share at a time, or multiple participants can share, or gives me advanced settings.
Oh, that's weird.
Straight out.
Welcome to virtual story time.
I'm clicking my own profile to see.
You're co-host, right?
It doesn't say that I am.
It says it on my screen.
Well, we're not going to worry about my slides because they're honestly not that important.
Okay.
And I have repeated several slides that I have shown you before. So the first thing that I was thinking about when I started to move into this, you know, our third week of doing this together, and I'm opening some notes on my phone, sorry, so I can see it while I'm looking at my screen. But we've been introducing the idea of mind in the making. We've been introducing the 7 essential skills. We did 2 of them last week. We're going to do 2 more of them today. But all I can really do in this time is give you just sort of a quick introduction to those essential skills and hope that you're kind of grasping the general pieces of it, and then encourage you to do some more learning on your own or through the Children's Cabinet if you want to. But, you know, with all that said, the starting point working with story times, whether virtual or in person, the story times are already kind of, you know, part of what Mind in the Making promotes, right? So I'm talking about each of the skills and why they're important. But just by showing up, everyone involved in your program is exercising their executive functions and they're building these 7 essential skills. So the easiest things of the day, like getting dressed and remembering what time and place to go to, that's practicing your executive functions. That's the kind of exercises for kids that keep the learning going. So just remember that all of that's happening in the background just by virtue of your program being available. So you're doing things without even intentionally building in these skill building things. The format of Storytime works because it's already doing that essential skill building. It promotes the kind of essentials that come from the science, and that's healthy bonding, back and forth interaction, and also it gives the opportunity to model and build autonomy. So really the back and forth interaction and the bonding that's happening is already inherent in your program, no matter what format, I think. And this, the next slide I would have showed you is the 5 brain building basics. And so we talk about that research. We know that the skills are important. We know that we can do things to promote them, but exactly how do we do that, right? What actions do we take in order to promote executive functioning? Promote the use of our working memory, our cognitive flexibility, and the control of our inhibitions. We can do these little things that you guys are already doing, and you're talking about it when you're talking about building print awareness, and when you're talking about all of the other early literacy skills that you're trying to build through Storytime. You're doing things like promoting, looking at where the child is looking, or having everybody focus on the screen or on the book. Looking is a big part of all of the skills that you're trying to incorporate with literacy. The taking turns is a really essential part of the science. Again, like you're promoting the bonding, you're promoting that interaction. And when you build little pieces into your program where you're encouraging the interaction between adult and child, that's brain building right there. And you can do that no matter what skill you're trying to teach, right? Like whether you're trying to focus on these essential skills or not, you're using those brain building basics as part of your programming already. And that's part of why, you know, the science bears out why your program is working. Part of the reason is because you're using those evidence-based tactics that we don't even know that we're using. We just know that they work, and that's the way we operate. So the 2 skills that we're going to talk about today are communicating and making connections. Last week we talked about focus and self-control, and we talked about perspective taking. So these are kind of intuitive, right? Focus and self-control, pretty obvious. Keeping ourselves under control, controlling our temptations and that sort of thing. perspective taking is empathy and also understanding where other people are coming from and what they're saying. So that's what we talked about last time. Communicating and making connections kind of go together, and they build on those other two skills that we just talked about. So communicating obviously is a big part of literacy, and we're only going to scratch the surface of how these two kind of intersect. Making connections is a big part of literacy too. Making connections has a lot to do with symbolic representation, and the acknowledgement that a lot of the knowledge that human beings have comes from symbolic representation, not from our direct experience, but from reading things or from looking at things or understanding the symbols that other people have put together for us to understand the world. So those are these two skills that we're going to talk about today. If I had the video up, I probably wouldn't show it to you anyway, again, because it takes time, and then the technology is always a little wonky. But those are things that are built into the learning modules. If you wanted to learn more, you could see more about how the development of these skills follows a timeline, and then the ways science shows us we can encourage them. But like I said, you're already doing a lot of that. And I wanted to spend, just the last couple of minutes before we just have a discussion, promoting the Mind in the Making skill building book series is, of course, my go-to way of how you might incorporate skill building more intentionally into your virtual programming, right? So that's a series of books designed for different ages that are focused on different skills. And so when you use those books, you then end up with sort of this package of curriculum building blocks. So you have the Mind in the Making books, you have associated one-pagers for each of those books, then you have associated room activities that go along with that particular skill, and that you can, so that's a little package that you can put together. But using the books is not the only way to incorporate the skill building. Obviously, you're choosing books. Children's books often have those skill building as part of the theme of the book, right? So much of children's books are teaching us those life skills about communicating and making those connections. Or, the book that I would have shown you today from the skill building book series for making connections is It Looks Like Spilt Milk. And it's a series, if you know that book, it's a lot of images, or maybe it's clouds, and it looks like, we try to make connections about what the spilled milk or the cloud looks like. Does it look like a cat? Does it look like a house? Right? So those are just, the book allows that experience of building the skill, and it also is a nice platform for talking to adults about that skill, if that's your intention to go that deep, right? But there's obviously lots of other ways, and some of you are doing it already. Like what Bruce said earlier, because I was thinking about it too, like using a puppet or a doll on screen with you is a good way to then model those brain building basics. Like when you look at the child, when you maybe pause and have an interaction with the child, when you ask the child an extending question, those kinds of things that you can build in, and things that you're doing with your literacy skills too. Having a prop on screen might help, but maybe it doesn't help that well when you're trying to get the book close to the screen. You can promote or demonstrate room tips in that way with a prop, or you can do it alone. And I think some librarians have done that either as part of their video, that the virtual story time includes this tip, or as an add-on, so separately as something that maybe that goes in the comments or gets distributed afterwards. You can also, add room tips or videos to social media. There kind of could be teasers for any kind of skill building story time you might do. And then you can also, work with parents and pilot reading the actual Mind in the Making book. Those are just some thoughts that I had to kick off your discussion. And I don't think my visuals would have made that much difference in the discussion. But if you have questions for me, go ahead and ask. But I think I just wanted to open it up. We only have a few minutes.
I would like to ask the librarians out there, how are you guys communicating with the parents during your story time? Do you directly call your attention to the parents, or do you provide some pre-session materials for them to look at? Or do you communicate through newsletters or something like that, or a sign-up list? I'm kind of curious about that, because what do you do to bring the parents and caregivers into the story time while you're doing this virtually? And it's open to anybody who wants to comment.
Bruce, like I said earlier, ours would be the extra activity that we give parents to do after our story time, and then also encouraging them to visit our website, to check out more books, and promoting our digital resources at this time to our parents.
Judy, can I ask you, do you do that like verbally in the parameters of your story time?
Yes, a lot of the staff do that. And then also, I'm so glad we have Samantha and Jackie here, because they both are our pioneers for our Break with Baby, which we just started, which is a way to share. It's not a story time, but they're doing a little song or a early literacy tips. So I don't know if they want to share more about that, but they're doing a fantastic job, and it's being really well received. And it's kind of that extra component of learning for parents and educators out there. And it's just a fun way, because I mean, everyone knows, I mean, I just always go back to when my daughters were little, before the internet and stuff, and I had certain books that I just grabbed onto because they had all the little songs and all the little things I could do with my baby, because I didn't know. I had no idea what to do with this. You know, I only knew so many songs. So what they've created is amazing. So I don't know. That's all I have to say.
Awesome. One of the things that I'm curious about is, like I said, is how do you communicate with parents virtually? This is something I want everybody here to contemplate and say, how am I communicating in my virtual story times with the parents out there? A lot of the time, what I like what Sarah said was that there are a lot of books out there that teach the executive function skills. And parents, because I was not aware of the executive function skills being taught in these books. And one of the things is communication, you know, is like, you don't read, when you engage in children, it's not a passive experience in my time as a storyteller. It's more of they talk back to you, they add comments, especially comments you're not aware of. These are things that I'm curious about. If you guys have any tips for communicating with parents, letting them know that it's okay when your child asks you questions when you're reading a book, and how you answer them, or how you guide the conversations and things like that. That's all good. And you know, the amazing part of it is storybook writers, children's books writers, we're teaching these executive functions without us knowing it, you know. And it's like, in a way, when we're adults now, we see how we were brainwashed, you know, by these books. So is there a book you think out there that anybody can recommend? You can put it in chat, that would help with these things that Sarah was just discussing. Or Sarah, do you have a title of a book maybe to give them a hardcore example of these things? 1 second. Yeah.
So I just quickly opened up my binder, because I know that the learning modules for Mind in the Making include an example for each skill. So these are the ones that I had in my slides. For communicating, the book that I had highlighted was a Sandra Boynton book, Moo Ba La La La. And there's, you know, like I said, if I don't, this is what I wanted to talk to Bruce and Sulin about. I think that the Mind in the Making books that are listed on the database that you shared with me, that I think is open to the public, it doesn't include these additional one-pagers. So those are also really helpful. They're available online as well as a whole list of all these books. But it's nice to see, how this book, and that one didn't pop out as much to me as the one about making connections, where you see it looked like spilt milk. I'm gonna hold it in front of my camera.
No, not quite, but nice try.
So anyway, it's like
that's a virtual
these are books,
obstacle. Yeah.
but I don't have to reinvent it, because all this stuff is available for you in a couple of places online. So you can absolutely go to Mind in the Making website and filter the books by skill. I only looked briefly at the library's database, whether you can filter it by skill.
The library database that she's talking about is teaching books. They have a whole listing of Mind in the Making skills if you go into that. So check that out. I think most of you have access to that. And it's a really great database for you all.
Also filters by age. So if your audience is particularly preschool students or toddlers, then you can find a series of books that's, you don't have to sort through it too much. So.
Okay. And I'm sharing the screen again. I think this is the right one. Yep. And we did discussion time, and things to think about next time will be letter knowledge and critical thinking, taking on challenges, and think about this from a virtual story time perspective. That's kind of what we're interested in knowing from you all. Like, what do you think might be the best way to do letter knowledge? I think all of you are going to zing on that one, because I think that's an easier one to do virtually, but critical thinking and taking on challenges might be a little difficult.
Yeah, the Mind in the Making skills get a little bit more complicated as we move from here out, a little less intuitive. So we'll do our best with the skills, but we'll talk mostly about how we can do this work in your virtual setting, since that's most pressing. And we'll come up with other ways to go further into that Mind in the Making stuff with you, if you like, later on.
And I'd like to thank you all and wish you a happy Thanksgiving. And here is our information if you guys need to get in touch with us. We are, like I said, we are recording this. Hopefully the next session, we will definitely let you know. Thursday, I'm sorry, got distracted. Thursday, we will have another session on the same subjects that we talked about today. If you want to attend that, we encourage it so that you can, get some questions for us, talk to some other people. Both of these sessions are usually well attended, so there'll be new people there that you can interact with, and we can get more information about, or from, I should say. But thank you all for attending. We are only 3 minutes over our allotted time, so if you hurry fast, you can make it to your desks or whatever that you have to go to if you're scheduled for something. Thank you for all attending, and I am going to stop sharing the screen. Stop the sharing of the screen. And I am stopping the recording right now. Thank you all for attending.